looking crew, yeah. Good. Well, hello. I am David Holt, the mayor of Oklahoma City, America's 20th largest city and home of the reigning NBA champions. Sorry. It's one time I'm going to say that this week. Maybe. I am also the current president of the United States Conference of Mayors, and I welcome the media in our nation's capital to the 94th winter meeting of the United States Conference of Mayors. Now, we traditionally start these press conferences by letting the mayors who are here introduce themselves. We think it gives you a good idea of the diversity of the mayors gathered here in Washington. There are nearly 300 mayors registered for this meeting, so this is certainly not all of them, but it is a pretty good representative sample. So we're going to start over there. We'll start with you, Tom, and then we'll start with the mayors, and I'll try to direct because this is the hardest part of this, having been through this before. So, but Tom Cochran started. All right, now the mayors.
Yvonne Flowers, Mayor of the City of Poughkeepsie, New York.
Tom Broderick, Mayor Anderson, Indiana.
Ron Case, Mayor of Eden Prairie, Minnesota.
Jim Hovland, Edina, Minnesota.
Deborah Wempe, Mayor of the City of Broken Arrow, which is the #1 place to live in the state of Oklahoma.
Wow. Shots fired. All right, here we go.
Kim Norton, Mayor of Rochester, Minnesota.
Dana Ralph, Mayor of the City of Kent, Washington.
Now let's go back to the back here.
Joe Franklin, Mayor of Manhattan Beach. I think we kind of got your feet on the weather.
Brett.
Smiley, Providence, Rhode Island. Tim Bussey, Bloomington, Minnesota. Van Johnson, Mayor of Savannah, Georgia.
Let's skip back, go over here. Let's catch Detroit.
Mary Sheffield, Mayor for the City of Detroit. Mayor Higgins, Mayor of the City of Miami, where we think we beat everybody's weather.
Brian?
Brian Burnett, Rochester Hills, Michigan.
Dina.
I went.
We got Dana. All right, Aquanetta?
Aquanetta Warren, Mayor of the great city of Fontana.
Elizabeth, you want to go real quick?
Elizabeth Couts, Mayor of Burnsville, Minnesota.
All right, now let's go to the back.
Ulysses Cabrera, Mayor of the City of Moreno Valley, California.
Derek Wood, Mayor of Dumfries, Virginia.
Jerry Dyer, Mayor of the City of Fresno, agricultural capital of the world.
Chris Barnett, Orion, Michigan. We're living as a vacation.
Michelle Davis Younger, Mayor, City of Manassas in Virginia.
Frank Viviano, Macomb Township, Michigan.
Quentin Lucas from Kansas City.
We'll stay back here. We'll come back to you.
Peter Wild, Cambridge, Connecticut.
Matt Turk, alcalde de Allentown, Pennsylvania.
How about you?
Larry Klein, Mayor of Sunnyvale, California, the heart of Silicon Valley.
Very good. You, sir.
Gary Gaywood, City of Rancho Cordova, the AI ecosphere of the world.
How about John?
John Mitchell, Mayor of New Bedford, Massachusetts.
How about you in the front?
Martha Guerrero, Mayor of West Sacramento.
Joy?
Mayor Joy Cooper from the City of Hallandale Beach, Florida.
How about you?
Mayor Brad Kavanaugh in Dubuque, Iowa.
Steve?
Steve Patterson, Athens, Ohio.
Thanks, Steve.
Raj Salwan, Mayor of Fremont, home of manufacturing, California.
Mahmoud?
Mayor Abdullah Hamoud, City of Dearborn, Michigan.
Yes, ma'am.
Adina Ishi, Mayor of the City of Berkeley, California.
Andy?
Andy Shore, Mayor of Lansing, Michigan.
Mayor Ewan?
John Ewing, Mayor of the City of Omaha, and also the home of the College World Series. Best show on dirt.
We'll just go around the horn. Stay with you.
Debbie Castriata, Mayor for the City and County of Broomfield, Colorado.
Tim?
Tim Keller, Albuquerque, New Mexico.
And last but not least.
Kitty Moore, City of Cupertino, home of Apple Computers.
Okay, cool. All right. I think I got everybody, right? Very good. She is actually chairing the International Affairs Committee right here, but we are hosted right now, but we are hosted here in Washington by our friend, the terrific Mayor Muriel Bowser, who is hosting her final winter meeting after a successful 12 years as mayor. And then I'm joined here at the podium, who we will hear from in a moment, by the Vice President of the conference, Todd Gloria, the Mayor of San Diego, and the second Vice President of the conference, Lyrian Gaylor Baird, the Mayor of Lincoln, Nebraska. We will, as I said, hear from them shortly, as well as from another colleague, Mayor Couts, before we take questions. But let me first begin by saying that mayors are keenly aware that we arrive today in Washington at a uniquely challenging time in the life of our democracy. This year, we celebrate 250 years since the Declaration of Independence. This milestone is a reminder of the enduring strength of this experiment, but we can't seem to escape reminders of its fragility as well. Too often, the serious work that should be happening in the city seems overshadowed by a never-ending reality show. But if it feels this morning like there is a rebalancing in the force in our nation's capital, it is because the mayors are in town. You know that final scene in the Avengers where every single hero all finally comes together in one place? This meeting of mayors is the American political version of that. Mayors are the adults in the room. We are the greatest cohort of political leaders in this country, and we are holding this damn thing together. You recognize many of the faces you see up here. Almost without fail, across the United States each week, another mayor steps into the national limelight, showing what real leadership looks like as we guide our residents through challenges and lead them to seize opportunities. Let me also point out that what you see up here are bipartisan mayors. I'm glad you're taking video of this because I know you don't see this very often. Standing here together, shoulder to shoulder, are Republicans, Democrats, and independents. Just like real Americans do every day in their lives, we work together across partisan lines within our cities and amongst each other. And in our cities, working together with both vision and pragmatism, we get things done. There's talk that the federal government might close yet again this week. You know what governments have never closed in their entire history? Every single government represented up here. When the snow piles up, we plow it. Some of our folks aren't here today because that's what they're doing right now, back in their cities. When our residents need basic services like police and fire, water, sewer, streets, transit, parks, and trash pickup, we deliver it. We don't have time for the nonsense. Are we going to fix Washington while we're here this week? Probably not. But we could, and the nation's capital could learn a heck of a lot from the work we mayors do every day. And this week at our winter meeting, we will learn from each other. That's always a highlight of this gathering, the sharing of best practices. We will also advocate as a unified front for the 80% of Americans who live in urban areas. Housing is the top federal policy issue for us, and we just heard this morning from Senator Tim Scott and Senator Elizabeth Warren, and we salute the bipartisan work they are doing on housing. We'll hear more about that in a moment. This week at our meeting, we're launching the Big City Alliance. We are hosting 6 plenary sessions, 40 breakout sessions, and a lot of great visitors on the program, including a host of business and nonprofit leaders, Senators Slotkin, Warren, and Scott, mayors from Japan and Ukraine, officials from the DOT and Amtrak and the NEA, Ryan Zimmerman from MLB, NBA All-Star Trae Young, and FIFA President Giovanni Infantino. But the real stars this week are the mayors. And there will be a lot of them on the main stage and in our breakouts and committee meetings sharing their stories. I serve with 2 of the best as officers of this organization, and I'd like to welcome them to the podium now for a few comments. First, Mayor Todd Gloria, Mayor of San Diego and Vice President of the conference.
Thank you, Mr. President. David Holt is a hard act to follow. But with respect to my colleagues, I will say that San Diego has the best weather of any of the cities who are here. See me outside if you want to fight about that. No, President Holt, thank you so much for your words and introduction this morning, as well as your incredible leadership of this nearly century-old conference that has brought cities together for a very long time now to help our nation move forward. I'm excited to be here with my fellow mayors to let folks know about the issues that matter most to the people that we serve. There's certainly a variety of issues that we can talk about this morning. I'm sure many will come up. When I talk to the folks back home in San Diego, the topic that comes up again and again and again, it doesn't matter if I'm talking to a young professional or a senior citizen, someone who is just starting out in their career or someone who's trying to raise a family, every single one of them is impacted by the high cost of housing. It is the central challenge of being able to pay the rent, which, by the way, is due in just a few days, or the cost of their mortgage also coming due soon. The kind of anxiety that everyday Americans are feeling every single time they have to sit down to make that payment is what we often hear in our city halls across this nation. This challenge is not theoretical, it is real, it is happening right now, and it is deeply personal to millions and millions of Americans. Everyone seems to have a story that is either their story or the story of someone close to them. I'm thinking about kids and grandkids that are still in the house that you might want to reclaim that room for something else. But it's not going to happen because they can't move out, despite having a job that pays them a very good salary, but still does not work for the housing economy that we're in. That is why housing affordability is a central focus of this conference and why it must remain one. This is not a new challenge for cities. We have been talking about this for years, and we keep coming back to it for a very simple reason. The fact of the matter is that America's families have continued to experience the high cost of housing, and they don't see relief in sight. This bipartisan organization has been able to move the ball a little bit. We've been able to speak with our partners here in Washington about the Road to Housing Act. We may represent cities of various sizes. We come from all over this country. We don't always share the same political view, but we're all here because we hear the same message at home, and we're repeating it here in our nation's capital. people cannot find places to live where they can afford. This particular problem is permeating every other issue that we deal with, from traffic congestion to lowering school enrollments. It absolutely touches everything. And that's why we want to thank our bipartisan leaders who have stepped forward on this issue, Senator Tim Scott, as well as Senator Elizabeth Warren in the Senate, and then our partners on the House side, Representative Mike Flood and Emmanuel Cleaver, who are leading the 21st Century Housing Act. American mayors are here today to say very clearly and very simply that we need comprehensive housing legislation passed by this Congress this year. We are encouraged by the attention that we are starting to see in the House and the Senate. It signals that Washington is listening to mayors, and they're starting to understand that this housing crisis is real, it is urgent, and it deserves and needs a sustained national focus. And so what we want to say is that when federal policy aligns with what we are doing back in our city hall, progress follows. And that means cutting through regulation, updating zoning, and backing projects with a local investment. Many of us are putting lots of our local dollars in, and we could use some federal partnership. And so our goal is simple. Cities where people who work hard and play by the rules can't afford to live in the cities that make our cities, but these are the people that make our cities work, and they deserve to be able to live and work in our cities. And so mayors will continue to push on this issue. It is our responsibility, and we need Washington, D.C. to get on the field with us and stop watching from the sidelines. We need their participation. We need their help. We can do this, and we can get this done because mayors get things done. And right now, I think one of the most important things we need to work on is the issue of housing affordability. With that said, it's my pleasure to now introduce the second Vice President of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, the great mayor of the city of Lincoln, Nebraska, Lyrian Gaylord Baird.
Thank you so much, Mayor Gloria. Thank you to you and to Mayor Holt for your steady and strong leadership of this organization. If there's any doubt about who the reigning NBA champs are, just check out Mayor Holt's socks when you have a minute after the press conference. And thank you to the members of the press for being here as we lift up the voices of the American people we serve each and every day. It matters that you're here, and we appreciate you. As Mayor Gloria mentioned, the nation's mayors call on Congress to conference the two housing bills that will make a difference for the people we serve. I have appreciated so much the opportunity to work with Congressman Mike Flood, who represents my city, Lincoln, Nebraska, in our 1st Congressional District, and who serves as the chair of the Housing and Insurance Subcommittee of the House Financial Services Committee. He's been wonderful to work with the conference throughout this legislative process. And I want to echo my colleagues' calls for Congress to pass a bipartisan, bicameral agreement that will help enable the nation's mayors to deliver the American dream to more of our residents. Because all people deserve the security and the dignity, the opportunity and the safety of a stable home and a chance to, what we call in Nebraska, enjoy the good life. The good life we want for our residents depends on safety beyond the front door, though. Our residents entrust local government with public safety, and that responsibility rests on trust. And that is why we work with our police departments in partnership with our community members to keep the people safe and to keep the peace. Cities also work closely with federal agencies to keep the peace and to keep people safe, to remove violent offenders from our streets. That coordination has contributed to measurable reductions in homicide and violent crime in cities of all sizes all across this country. As mayors, we recognize and celebrate and share in that progress. As mayors, we also share in the collective risk of escalating tensions and civil unrest that results from a lack of coordination between federal government and state and local government officials. When trust is lost in how laws are being enforced in one city, we feel the risks to our police officers and to our residents in all cities, which is why I echo the calls from my fellow mayors as well as members of the Nebraska congressional delegation in urging de-escalation, transparency, and accountability. Our conference welcomes strong intergovernmental coordination to keep the public and our law enforcement professionals safe. The nation's mayors will continue our work to ensure public safety in our cities and restore the public trust necessary for the enduring success of this great 250-year American experiment. With that, I'd like to turn the podium back to our president, Mayor David Holt.
Thank you so much, Mayor. Well, the U.S. Conference of Mayors reflects our member mayors in that we always have one eye on the horizon. This is not a group of people or an organization who are consumed by the 24-hour news cycle. But at the same time, we also lead in the moment, and we certainly have our feet firmly planted in the issues of today. There has been no more urgent challenge facing all Americans these past few weeks than the chaos in Minnesota, stemming from an unprecedented surge in immigration enforcement. After the second death of a Minnesota resident in confrontations with federal law enforcement, our conference issued a statement Saturday calling for national leadership to step up and change the status quo. Many, many others across the partisan spectrum and at every level of government did the same, and it looks like a reset is being considered. We certainly hope so, and we will stay vigilant. To share some of the raw experiences from Minnesota, we'd like to bring Mayor Elizabeth Kautz to the podium. Mayor Kautz is a former president of this conference, and she is the longtime mayor of Burnsville, Minnesota, which is a city of about 65,000 in the Minneapolis metropolitan area, just south of Minneapolis. Mayor Kautz.
Thank you, President Holt, Vice President Gloria, Second Vice President Gaylord Baird, and to my colleagues, thank you so much for your support and your love and kindness towards all of us in Minnesota. It is my pleasure to represent the mayors of Minnesota who are all here, and we have been working together to make sure that our communities are safe. As you have heard, public safety is very important to all of us, and we work hard to make our communities safe. And you have seen statistics where throughout the country, every city crime has been reduced. And that is true in Minnesota as well. However, with the introduction of ICE, our cities are no longer safe. Crime is not reduced, and what happens is that the people of Minnesota are now being harassed, intimidated, and cruelly treated. Now, we all agree that we want violent criminals to be off our streets, whether they were born here or arrived here. And as you heard Mayor Baird talk about our coordination with federal agencies, we understand that the federal government has a role to play. And throughout decades, our history says that all previous government presidents, both Democrat and Republican, have had removal process. But it was done through proper channels, the rule of law, due process, rooted in the Constitution. However, in Minnesota, that is not our experience. We agree, if you're going to go out to get the worst of the worst, then you should also have names of who those people are, where they live, get a judicial warrant, and issue that warrant and arrest those people and remove them. That's what we do in our police departments. Once we identify a criminal, we get a judicial warrant by a judge, and we know who that person is, where they live, and quietly arrest them and take them through due process. However, all of you have noticed that in Minnesota, that is not what we're experiencing. And in Minnesota, our people rise up to protect one another and to protect our neighbors. In my own city, each and every day, daily, my residents, my businesses are being harassed. People are not leaving homes to go to work, to go to school, to go to church, to go to grocery stores, etc. They're afraid because they're being profiled. You see, if you're not Caucasian and you are brown or black, you are being stopped, harassed, and that's not just our regular residents. That also happened to police officers that are off duty from some of our northern suburbs, where the police chief talked about what one of his officers encountered. So around Minnesota, our people are carrying their passports or their papers, that they are residents, they're here legally, and are working, they pay taxes. I can tell you that I carry my passport. Those ICE agents don't know that I'm the mayor of the city of Burnsville, but I could, coming out of a store, be harassed. So I need to make sure that I have credentials on me. That's the same with all of my residents. One of the things that we do in Burnsville is we do high touch. When this all started to happen, we have an engagement team that goes out and meets with our businesses, our faith community, our schools, Chamber of Commerce, and also our residents, and allow them to know that we're there, and let them know that our police officers, by law, only enforce local and state law. They do not enforce federal law. If there's an incident, they may be there to make sure that people are safe and also to make sure that traffic continues to move through. You see, when ICE agents come into our neighborhoods, it's not 1 or 2 vehicles. Sometimes there are 10 or more. It overwhelms a neighborhood, creates fear and mistrust. It is horrific. Now, as mayor, I see our job as the chief consoler. So when I get a notification about a business or a family that's been impacted, I go out and meet with them. And one of the things that we say in Burnsville is that we can control what we do. We will take care of one another. We will make sure that people who are in prison in their own homes simply because they're afraid to leave and then be apprehended, taken away, and then their children are left without a parent. People are afraid to leave their homes, to go to the grocery store, and might never return, and their children are left. This is some of the problems that we're dealing with. It is horrific. And when you are living in that environment on a daily basis, when you're trying to also keep your city safe, it is unbelievable. So here's the impact that I see with all of what's going on. With all the businesses that are closing, and we just talk about the need for affordable housing, and construction is now really have slowed down simply because they don't have workers. And appointments that they had made for final inspection so that they can get a certificate of occupancy is now to be determined. We have a housing crisis. This is exacerbating it. Economic development is being exacerbated. The other thing is that if we talk about homelessness, let me tell you, we're working hard to help our people make sure that they can pay their rent, pay their mortgage, pay their car loans, and we're working with faith communities to make sure that they get food. And we have thousands of volunteers helping to deliver foods to our different residents. So when you have an economic impact, that's not going to be good for all of us. And then we're exacerbating the homelessness issue, exacerbating mental health. Can you imagine the mental health for not only children, but for adults and everybody else? This is the impact. And now, as mayors, like it's been said many times, we're going to have to come back and make sure that our communities rebound, become more vibrant, and thrive through all of this. We did it during COVID, and we can do it again together, helping each other when we come to the conference and talk about best practices and learn from each other so that we can go back and make sure that our people are well taken care of and our cities are safe again. Thank you.
Thank you for that impactful testimony, Mayor Cowes. We're now going to take questions, and if you have a specific mayor you want to ask that question to, you might mention that. Otherwise, we will sort of assign it based on our best judgment. Yes. Well, it's a very high-level question, right? I think that, well, first of all, I would say this conference is full of eternal optimists. That's sort of a personality trait that is intrinsic to being a mayor. And so I think we will always hope and attempt to be partners with the federal government. And I think you also saw how our voice collectively with many others has had an impact this week, and maybe we can be partners in some of these efforts again. I think your question probably stems to some degree specifically from immigration enforcement, and so I might also, that was my sort of philosophical answer, but I'd like to maybe call Mayor Dyer of Fresno to talk a little bit more about the actual, what collaboration really looks like between law enforcement agencies on different levels. Mayor Dyer, I should mention, is the former police chief of his city, but is now the mayor. And I think partnership, he can talk to maybe even more specifically, but I would say from a general matter, we still always want to be partners, and we will always keep that door open. Mayor Dyer?
Thank you, Mayor Holton. Thank you for that question. I think it's a very legitimate question in today's environment. And simply from a governmental perspective locally, we're always going to partner with whatever entity shares the same mission and vision that we do. And when that mission differs, then we have to make decisions locally whether or not we're going to continue with that partnership. But I can say when it pertains to ICE and immigration, we all agree in comprehensive immigration reform. And we know that that can only come out of Washington, D.C. That includes securing our borders, which I will compliment this administration on doing a great job of securing our borders. It also includes having a pathway to citizenship, and we have a lot of work to do in our country in order to achieve that. And then lastly is immigration enforcement, and we support that. It's how that's done that really matters and who's being targeted. We all agree, as you heard Mayor Couch say, that we want to see serious criminals deported from our country who are here and are undocumented. That is all of our collective goals. We believe that because our primary foundational goal as mayors is to keep our community safe, and that's how we do so. But after spending 40 years in the Fresno Police Department, the last 18 as a police chief, there's one thing I learned that is fundamental to policing, and that you have to earn the trust of the people in which you serve. And that trust is very delicate, and it's hard to gain and easy to lose. And in order for us to gain that trust, we have to police neighborhoods with their permission. We cannot be seen as an occupying force when we go into those neighborhoods. And so the tactics that are utilized, the manner in which arrests are being made, all of those are what allow you to either be well received and welcomed or rejected. And what we're seeing in America today from primarily ICE is that they're being rejected. They're being rejected by communities. Why? Because of the policing tactics that are being utilized that have been abandoned by local law enforcement as 30 years ago. And we're seeing those tactics continue to be used by ICE in our neighborhoods. There is a lack of training, obviously, when you look at how operations are being carried out. A lack of training in the area of de-escalation. We spend an enormous amount of time making sure that our police officers are trained in de-escalation. And what we're seeing oftentimes with the operations of ICE is that situations are escalating. And I agree with what's happening right now in Minneapolis, where they're starting to pull some of the ICE agents out, because that, in law enforcement, we call that a tactical retreat. If sometimes just the mere presence of law enforcement can escalate a situation, and that's what we're seeing. So we support legitimate enforcement efforts by ICE to remove serious criminals, but we want them to be held to the same standard that we hold our local police departments to in terms of being professional, well-trained, and de-escalating situations whenever possible. Thank you.
Thank you. I thought I saw you first last time. We'll get to everybody. Go ahead. Well, it is challenging, right? I mean, you know, I have my own residents say you need to stop them, and I'm saying, like, you know, nobody could be less welcoming to ICE than Mayor Frey, but they're still there. You know, we are a little beholden to the Supremacy Clause of the United States Constitution. But I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Mayor Dyer. Go ahead.
In terms of what mayors can do, I think we have to have our collective voice heard like we're doing today. We're not here to bash the administration, and we're not here to bash ICE. We know that they have a difficult job to do and a much-needed job in America. What we're asking ICE to do and what we're asking the president to do is to hold ICE accountable, to make sure that they're getting the training that they need to go out and do their job effectively, to become a welcomed presence in neighborhoods. Quite frankly, I think that ship has sailed right now, and we need to take a breath in America and maybe cause ICE to pull back, regroup, retrain, and then maybe approach us from a different stance. And I think from a mayor's perspective, we have to make sure that we have that voice heard. Just like Mayor Holt said, I have people in my community demanding that I arrest ICE agents, demanding, we have a law in California, you cannot wear a mask if you're a law enforcement officer. And it was made, that law was made as a result of what is occurring with ICE. And so people want my officers to go out and arrest ICE agents for wearing a mask. Well, we're not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. I can't do that because that's only going to increase the tensions that we have out there. But we do have to have our voices heard. We do need to give direction to our law enforcement agencies. For example, in Fresno, we do not participate in any type of immigration enforcement or raids. That's not our job. We enforce local laws, and I believe that's the general attitude of just about every mayor that's standing here, and we can continue with that. And we have to do our job to go out and keep the peace. Unfortunately, whenever there's protests that occur now, and we respect the right of people to protest, we do, as long as they do so peacefully. And we have to utilize our resources to keep people safe. But we do not want people to think that we are taking sides with ICE as we do that. We're just trying to keep people safe. And I say this, and it gets rejected at times, but the federal ICE officials or agents have police powers. They do have the power to arrest people and detain people. And they have the power to respond with deadly force in a given set of circumstances, and we've seen that already. Agree or disagree with the use of that force. But what we want to make sure is that people are following directions so that we don't have unnecessary incidents occur in our communities that ultimately end up in a tragedy.
Thanks. And one thing to add to this, just a basic historical reminder that this country has been enforcing immigration laws for over 100 years, and ICE has been around for over 2 decades. This can be done without the chaos that we've seen. Yes, ma'am. Well, of course, we're here now. We're all going to be talking about it quite a bit. We actually have a mayor's-only session this afternoon where we will talk specifically about this. We certainly build relationships here that we carry into our service, and there's lots of text groups and communications. I don't know, Mayor Gloria, do you think anything to add to that about the coordination between mayors? You're part of a lot of networks. And yeah, Mayor Jim Hovland of Edina, Minnesota.
I'm Jim Hovland, Mayor of Edina, Minnesota, which is a first-rank suburb of Minneapolis. So as we've experienced this situation with ICE over the past month, 13 cities have gathered together now and formed a working coalition, primarily suburban communities, to support our inner-city communities, and just now developing our strategies around how we're going to interact with the federal government, how we're going to encourage the type of policing that should be occurring from I think Mayor Dyer has mentioned this constitutional policing. We'd like to see some changes made with respect to the policies that historically existed around schools, around churches, around medical facilities. If they would change those policies, I think it would mean quite a bit. I think Mayor Couts made a great point about all of the neighbors that are helping neighbors in Minnesota. And I think the head of the Border Patrol made a faulty observation about people in Minnesota. Somebody asked him, what are these protesters like? And he said, they're very organized, but they're soft. They're not soft. They're kind.
Oh, my gosh.
They are kind, and they're kind to each other. And so it was a total misread of people in Minnesota, and you can see it from the protests that have occurred, that generations upon generations of us dealing with adverse weather have put us in a situation where we work together. And it's not weakness. To the contrary, it's resilience. And you're seeing that now in abundant form. And as these external forces tear at the very fabric of our communities that we're responsible for shepherding, threads from the federal government are attempting to pull it apart. And it's really hard to figure out how to deal with it, as Mayor Dyer said, Mayor Holt said, with the supremacy clause. So all of us are working in an environment where it's very, very difficult. But having 13 cities now working together, trying to work with Republican legislators, congressional delegations from our state. Some of us heading to the Hill this afternoon to meet with some of our congressional delegation to try to get this problem solved and to get policing back to what it should be, the standards of professionalism that local police use. When the people in our town, in the business community, see our local police come down the street now, they cheer. They're so happy to see them. They want to see more of it. For the restaurateurs that are closed, either temporarily or permanently, the restaurateurs that are driving their workers to work, the ones that dare to come to work. And it doesn't matter if you're from a household where you have mixed status or you have clear status, there is random enforcement going on. I think it's clear to say that there's racial profiling going on. All of these things that are unconstitutional are going on in Minnesota, and it can happen anywhere. And so we need to figure out how we're going to deal with this. And as our president said, we are a country that has had immigration enforcement for decades, and we can do it the right way, and we want to do it the right way. No nation can exist without safe borders. We all understand that. But no society can exist without respect for the laws that are employed. And people talk about trust. This is what's being frayed right now is trust between the federal government and local government and people. So in this 250th year of democracy, I would tell you that in Minnesota, there is trouble in the republic. And it's illustrative of what could happen anywhere. And so we're just trying to deal with it, and there are people who are trying to deal with it in their own way. And for the most part, they've been very, very, I think, respectful and peaceful in their protesting. Yeah, they make some noise, they sound their whistles, but that's not pushing an ICE agent or doing something that's improper from a protesting standpoint. So give it up for the people of Minnesota, the people on the street, the people that are in positions like ours that are trying to find a pathway to a solution, to make sure that we work together like we've always worked together with the federal government on issues like this. Many of the people that the ICE says they're arresting in Minnesota were already in custody, and we turned them over to ICE. I think there were 68 of them that were criminals that we turned over. So, I mean, you could go on and on about this situation. And when they said the enforcement was going to be targeted, it was not. When they said they weren't going to violate constitutional rights, they have. And so we need to figure out a solution to this problem, and we need to do it together because it can be done. And as our president said, it's been historically done the right way. And we want it in Minnesota and everywhere else to be done the right way so that we can continue to have the kind of democracy that we should have, because we don't want to have we don't want to have government be distrusted by the governed. That's a recipe for disaster. So thank you.
Yes, I'll get to this, everybody. Yes.
Thank you, dear Mayor. Thank you for your comments. This is Amir Sural from Turkey. I would like to ask, this is my third year, and every year you go to White House. They host you, and you do events. Is there any program at the White House? Because when I checked the White House weekly schedule, I couldn't see any schedule. President Donald Trump is going to host you.
Correct. Yeah, we have not been invited. Next question? Yes. Sure. Who's our AI? Who wants to be? You want to go for it? He said as many mayors as want to talk about it, so go ahead.
Oh, absolutely. And so I'm Sunnyvale Mayor Larry Klein. Heart of Silicon Valley, and AI is affecting all of our cities, whether or not it's the businesses or the cities themselves. We're all in a learning mode, and that's the biggest thing right now. Taking a look at how we can improve our processes is the biggest effort there. And we don't know, I'll say honestly, we don't know how it's going to fully affect us, whether or not it's our businesses and how that future ultimately stands. But AI breaks down barriers. So as much as there's worry about that, our city council meetings, we actually translate into 60 different more than 60 different languages that people can listen and read along and be a part of the process. And so there's many things that can be positive about AI, but we are all looking at it with a wary eye. How it affects us, data security, how people's data is being used is a critical thing. So I think, I'm sure each of our cities has examples of different ways that AI is being utilized, for good or bad. A lot of it's pilot programs at this point, but being part of Silicon Valley, being part of, California and the nation, AI is here to stay. It's how it's utilized, it's what guardrails we put in place. And, it's taking those small steps to make sure that it's better for our cities in the long run.
I apologize. It's Mayor Gary Gatewood of the city of Rancho Cordova. AI is the future. AI is what's going to put small, medium, and large cities on the map. It has great potential not only to engage with cities, but become a profit center that then can take care of cities and communities all at the same time, all in the technology itself. Rancho Cordova, the city, is partnered with NVIDIA, which you've probably heard of, this little teeny company out there, to build an AI ecosphere, and they're going to take this kind of product and push it across the nation. Every city that can embrace this as fast as possible, not only they're going to have some bumps and bruises as they learn over new technology, but it's one of those things that is on the forefront of everything. So it is the future of all the smaller cities. It is the future of governance as a whole. It's going to be something that people immediately are going to see advantages of. And honestly, it's one of the few, the White House is jumping on, giving billions of dollars out. And the more we can engage in it, the more money is out there for small, medium, and large cities. So it's great. Everything's great. And love it. Love AI.
Next question. Who's left? Yes? You hear that groaning up here? Yeah. I just had a volunteer, Andy Shore, would like to address this.
So you're welcome, everyone. So I am going to be optimistic. So in Lansing, we have been working on this for some time now. We have a data center that wants, it's a smaller one, a 26 megawatt data center, so it's not one of the hyper ones. And honestly, we have worked with a company called Deep Green, which is out of England. They want to do it on the edge of our downtown, and we made some demands. We have all heard the issues. There are boxes to check. Water. We don't want you pulling out of our aquifer in Michigan. We're in the Great Lakes. They said we're going to do closed loop. They're not taking any more water than the local fast food restaurant. Energy. We have a little bit of capacity. We have our own municipal utility. So we're going to be able to give them a little bit of capacity, 8 megawatts, and they're going to build 16 megawatts of capacity with renewable energy, but we're going to make them pay for it. They're going to pay for it. They're going to build it. If for some reason this doesn't happen, they have built it, we will have it, and we will be able to use it however we want. And then layering on top of that, because they're building energy and they're going to be providing energy, we're going to do what's called heat capture. So there's energy heat waste that goes up and out. Everyone thinks it's Michigan, right? You just open the windows and you can cool it down. Doesn't always work that way. Sorry, everybody. It is snowy, though. So we're going to capture that heat. We're going to put it right back into our system. We have a steam loop. We're going to put it right back into the system. So instead of rates going up, rates are going to stabilize and maybe even go down. I think that with data centers, what I am seeing is you have to take it on. They're going to be paying an extra $1 million in taxes and property taxes. I'm not giving an incentive. They're going to pay an extra $1 million in property taxes. You have to take it on and say you are cash rich. A lot of these folks are cash rich. They can create the infrastructure. They can make sure that it's not going to harm community, and you can move forward in a positive way. And if not, then we were not going to approve it. Now, that's not to say that we don't have many of our residents, just like everybody here, coming and screaming and yelling about higher rates, noise, water, and we have been able to navigate these things. We told them you have to have buffering to make sure that there's not noise problems. We told them they has to comply with our planning. They're on the edge of our downtown, so we're going to make it industrial, but they're going to put up murals and they're going to make it look nice. It's not going to be a dead spot because it's not in the heart of our downtown, but we're still going to make sure that it complies with planning. I think we as cities can set the standard, and they want to be in our cities. So I think that if we can set the standard, they're going to comply with that. It can be a win-win. Now, again, there are some people out there who hate AI and hate, they say that we're never going to talk those people into this. But when it comes to the legitimate issues of neighbors and residents, it's our duty And this is what we do as mayors, Republicans and Democrats. This is what we do. We make sure we're going to get it right for our residents. We're going to put it up, and we're going to, make sure we hold them to it. And that's what we're doing in Lansing, and I think that that's a good model. Thank you.
It is worth digging into Lansing if you're really interested, because I actually, before he started speaking, I already knew about the great concessions that Lansing had received. So that's making the rounds and is a good model for sure. Any other questions? Forgive me, I can't see. Nope. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming out. We really appreciate it. Thank you, all the mayors.
Great job.